What's going on YouTube? So Chevy has been changing the small crossover game with this fully redesigned Chevy Trax, an affordable and stylish crossover. And after living with this fully loaded 2RS model for a full 7 days, does this prove that you don't have to sacrifice much for that $25,000 price tag? Well, let's go ahead and find out. So first things first, we went ahead and popped the hood so we can talk briefly about the specs and what is underneath of it. So this has a 1.2 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder engine. It makes 137 horsepower and is paired to a 6-speed automatic transmission with power put to the ground via the front wheels only. In terms of your fuel economy, you're looking at 30 combined mpg. Now, of course, we'll be talking about our real-world fuel economy over the past 7 days later on in the test drive, as well as be doing things like our sound level reading on our home state of Kentucky's roads to get how quiet this vehicle is. Now, also later on in the review, we'll be talking about pricing as well as 2 new elements, resale value and reliability, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. But first, let's go ahead and close up the hood because I mentioned in the introduction, this is a quite stylish little crossover. Now, when it comes to this new generation of the Trax, Chevy could have given it a all-new name because you cannot tell that this is really even related to the previous generation at all. It's grown in all dimensions, including in the width up here in the front, but most importantly, it's grown in just overall attractiveness. This is a very handsome, small crossover now. Now, in terms of what you get up here in the front, as you can see, you've got that signature Chevy grille. What they have done, though, is kind of made each trim level have its own characteristics, so you'll notice a few different things that change, particularly when you go from the RS trim level, which is what we have here, to the active trim level, which has a little bit more of a rugged look. Now, in terms of our lighting, you are going to have standard premium LED headlights across the entire lineup, but if you get the LT or above, that's going to get you the more advanced version, which includes the nice daytime running light strip up here at the top, and you also have the projector LED down there and the lower part. Only the turn signal is going to be incandescent. And as we move around to the rear, you'll continue to find that sleek look. Yeah, and overall for an affordable SUV, I do really like the shape of the rear design, and it has kind of that sleek design that Drew was talking about, which starts with the spoiler up top. Then as we drop down, we have an exposed rear wiper, which is something the Buick Envista does not have, by the way. Drew's hopping inside as well so we can check out the taillight elements and see if all of the elements are LED. Now, with this Trax, one of the things I do want to point out is that all of the elements are going to be incandescent. Now, this is a very affordable crossover, so that's pretty much expected, but none of the elements are going to be LED regardless of what trim level you choose. And then as I drop down to this lower area, you will notice since we have the RS, we have a mixture of rugged matte black, some piano black, and we have some RS branding over here. No exposed exhaust outlets on any version of the Trax, but overall I think it's a very nice and handsome look. Now the stylish look continues as we come to our wheels because we've got a wide assortment of options. You're going to begin with 17-inch alloys and you work your way up through 18-inch alloys, and if you go all the way to this 2RS trim level, this has the biggest wheels of the bunch. These are 19-inch alloy wheels. I definitely like the look of these with this special contrast design. It's a very attractive overall look. And as we come up here to our mirrors, we do have a nice gloss black finish here because we have an RS trim level. RS trim levels as well as the active are going to include standard mirror heating, and blind spot monitoring is an option across the entire lineup, including on the base trim. Now, like Drew said in the front, this vehicle doesn't just look a lot nicer, it's actually quite a bit larger, and one of the places that you're definitely going to see that is here at the side. This Trax is up 11 inches in overall length over the previous generation model, and it's about 4 inches lower as well, which contributes to that sleeker overall presence. Now, of course, we're going to talk about how that translates to interior space in just a second, and I also want to talk about your safety systems because that's a pretty impressive area for this Trax. Chevy is including 3 out of your 4 active safety features as standard equipment on this model. Additionally, a Trax first is that they're offering adaptive cruise control as an option on your higher end trim levels.
But guys, that's going to be it for this exterior design of this Trax. Let's get onto the inside and see what we've thought over the past week. But first, if you're new here, we're brothers, and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We may be young, but we love cars.
And we'd love for you to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family. Let's learn a lot, have some fun with all the latest cars.
Now let's move on to the interior. First, we'll take a look at the key fob. This is your typical Chevy Smart Entry key fob because we do have the LT trim level or above. That's going to give you the Smart Entry system, which means to get inside, all you will do is press the silver button and that will unlock the doors. Now, let's take a look inside the interior. You'll probably be very surprised by the way this cabin looks despite the very affordable price tag that we have on board. But before we get into all the specific details of what you get inside the cabin, we want to start off by talking about your material and color choices. So you're going to begin things in the lineup with a cloth seat, but once you kind of move up the rungs and you get to the 2RS, that's going to get you the full Evotex leatherette seat. This is a very nice seat. As you can see, we have perforation. We have a lot of color contrast stitching as well. Black is the only way you can get this with the red accents. So you have RS branding, the red accents, and piping through there. Like I said, overall, it's a very nice looking seat. It's also pretty comfortable as well. Now, in terms of your adjustments, you'll notice that these are going to be manual adjusting seats. And that goes for every trim level except for that active trim level at the very top of the lineup. By the way, I do want to point out before we get inside that this exterior color is known as cacti green, and it matches pretty nicely with this cool black interior. But let's get inside. Now that we've climbed inside, let's go through the rest of the cabin materials. Now, of course, this is going to be the most affordable Chevy crossover in the lineup. So we are going to have some hard touch materials. It is going to be hard touch, for instance, over here on our armrest, but we do have a leatherette above that with a stitching detail. Top part of the door trim will be hard as well. As we move to the upper dash, one of the things that Chevy has done is kind of added this cool texture to the plastic running through here. We also have a nice piece of piano black trim with red accenting and really cool looking vents over here on this RS trim level. These pieces do change out depending on which trim level you choose. And then down on your lower panel, finally, this is also finished in a piano black. But let's go ahead and fire it up with our push button start, which comes on the LT trim and above. Now, before we start to get into the nitty-gritty details of what features are on what trim levels and all that, I do want to point out that the space between the base model and the very top trim level is less than $4,000. So just keep that in mind. There are 5 different trim levels, but you really don't have to spend much more at all to get those additional features that you might want. One of those things you might want is a digital gauge cluster. This is an 8-inch digital gauge cluster, and this is going to be included on the LT trim level and above. In terms of what you can do with it, it doesn't do a lot, but you can change a few different design elements and have things like your fuel economy up there on the display. Now, pulling back to the steering wheel, this is one of my favorite elements about this interior. It's a really nice steering wheel. This RS version is going to have a flat bottom steering wheel. We have perforated leather. We have a cross-stitched detail that goes around the outside edge in the red color. And perhaps the coolest thing about this steering wheel is the fact that it's actually heated. So believe it or not, both RS trim levels and the Active are going to have a heated steering wheel. And not only that, but it does work really, really well. It's very hot. And then the wheel itself will be manual, tilt, and telescoping. Now, let's turn over here and take a look at interior storage. Because this Trax is a lot bigger than before, it does mean you have more utility, including in our center console. So you'll notice it's loaded with donuts because this is Car Confections and we like to do the donut test. And what fits inside this console is 9 donuts. That is a good result for a vehicle in this class because subcompact crossovers tend to be small. This one here has pretty good space inside of that console. We also have more space right there in front of the console. And then up in the front, you have a nice storage bin. If you choose to have the optional sunroof, you also add in wireless phone charging pad right there. Now coming back to the shifter, nothing complicated going on here. I like that it's just a traditional style. You can control shifts manually with these little toggles on the side. There are no paddle shifters on the steering wheel. When we go into reverse, you're going to find a standard backup camera on board. Resolution, not too bad. We also have active trajectory on board, and I was surprised to find out that we have rear parking sensors as well on today's example. And then right behind that, you also have an electronic parking brake. Now, moving on up the console area, the next place we come to are our climate controls. So this is a single zone automatic setup. This is included if you choose the LT trim level or above. Very simple to use, just twist the knob there to adjust your temperature. Like I said, it is single zone, so you don't have a separate adjustment over here on this side. Nevertheless, one thing I am happy to see is that we have heated seats. You have those included standard on your RS trim levels as well as your active trim level, and it is available on the LT as well. You also have a nice physical volume knob for the audio system. So the lower trims will come with 4 speakers, the upper trims will come with 6 speakers, and let's go ahead and sample that latter one. Overall sound quality is not too bad given the price point. Obviously, if you're big into music though, you might want to find a Bose sound system, and that's only going to be available if you choose the Trailblazer, not this Trax. Alright, let's take a look at the technology. Another thing that's going to be very impressive about this interior is the fact that we have a large screen. So this is an 11-inch screen. This starts at the LT trim level once again. Lower trims will come with an 8-inch screen, which frankly is still a good size for this segment as well. In terms of the technology, this is kind of the newest General Motors setup, which is Android Automotive based, meaning the performance is going to be pretty fast. You have the main things that people are going to want. So on a system like this, you have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. That's the most important thing that everybody is going to be looking for, and you do still have things like Sirius XM radio. No built-in navigation though, or anything like that. Now rising above, we have a manual dimming mirror up here at the top, and here at the roof we have the available sunroof. As I was mentioning earlier, this is an option on your upper end trim levels.
Now that we're sitting in the rear seat area of the Trax, I have a lot to talk about here, and really the main thing that I just want to point out is that it's a lot larger than what you would think. That's for sure. That's because this vehicle, it did grow that 11 inches, and that's translated a lot to rear seat area and space. So as far as the legroom, we're sitting at about 39 inches of legroom, about 38 inches of headroom. Those are very impressive figures. That really puts it as one of the largest offerings you can get. And I'm 5'9" for reference, and this seat is adjusted to Drew, who is 5'8", and we're sitting at about 8.5 inches of additional knee room. My feet can also slide up underneath the seat easily, so I am very, very comfortable overall, and I have to say it's a lot better than what you would think. Now, the rear seats do not recline, so do keep that in mind. And I do want to point out that the thigh support is a little bit low, at least for my liking. Maybe a kid would appreciate a little bit more, but you kind of have to be fully stretched out to have your thighs covered by the seat. However, aside from that, we do also have some features as well. If you choose an LT trim or above, you're going to get these 2 charging USB ports. That's rare for this segment of vehicle. And then you do have a little storage compartment underneath, although you're not going to have any vents or anything along those lines. One of the other things that you're going to be missing out on is a center armrest. That's going to be one of those things that, General Motors had to cost cut in order to keep this at an affordable price point. And then as far as the door trim is concerned, we do have a hard touch door trim from top to bottom. So there's not going to be any padded material. However, we do have some bottle storage down at the very bottom. Now walking up to the cargo area, this area is also pretty darn impressive. Now, first and foremost, we do have a manually opening tailgate across the entire board. No power tailgate is offered. Of course, that's once again to retain that affordable price tag. And then as far as the space is concerned, we're going to be sitting at around 26 cubic feet of space behind the second row of seats. If we fold those seats down, we're looking at a maximum of 54 cubic feet of space. Now, as far as how that compares to the rivals, that's going to be right in line with something like a Honda HR-V. It's actually also very much on par with the Chevy Trailblazer within the own Chevy lineup. Now, very impressive space figures. Let's go ahead and see how the seats fold. They do fold 60-40 split, and there are not any handles, so I'll have to go up and fold them from the second row itself. And now that I've got those seats folded down, I do want to do one of our other Car Confections signature things, which is measure from the driver's seat adjusted to someone who's 5'8" all the way to the rear of the cargo area. And we're looking at an overall length of 71 inches, which is quite impressive. From behind the second row of seats to the rear of the cargo area, it's about 35 inches. And then as far as the cargo width, keep in mind this vehicle has grown a lot in terms of its overall width. We're sitting at about 38 inches wide. So overall, this Trax is a lot more practical than you'd expect. And then underneath of the floor, you do have a spare tire.
So now it's the point of the video where we head out for a test drive with this Trax. Of course, in this test drive, we're going to cover all the normal assortment of information, including getting our Kentucky official sound level reading. But first of all, let's begin things with a hard acceleration.
And there is 60 miles per hour in the all-new Chevy Trax. Now, you may have heard the tires chirp a little bit there. So, if you put your foot all the way down to the ground, this vehicle does actually have enough torque to kind of chirp the wheels a little bit, which is an interesting sensation for anything in this segment. Now, as far as what's under the hood, to recap what we said at the spec dump, it's a 1.2-liter turbo 3-cylinder. This is going to be making 137 horsepower, 162 pound-feet of torque. So the torque figure, very impressive. 162 pound-feet is pretty darn good for this segment of vehicle. 137 horsepower is maybe what I would call average in this segment, maybe a little bit below average, but I think the torque more than makes up for it.
Yeah, when it comes to subcompact crossovers, there's kind of a division. There's more affordable offerings, which is certainly what this Trax falls under, and then there's some oftentimes more expensive but maybe a little bit more powerful, like the Trailblazer. So Chevy does offer both the Trax and the Trailblazer. For those of you who don't know, the Trailblazer is going to be a little bit more premium. It does give you the ability to add a little extra power, but in terms of what you get with this model, it is more than adequate when you're driving it around. I know a lot of people see the power figures, and we see all your comments. You don't believe us when we say it's actually plenty powerful when you're driving around town, especially when you get off the line with that torque. It feels like you have a lot more power at play than you actually do. And in terms of 0 to 60, it's about 8.6 seconds. So that's adequate for this segment. It competes well against things like the Kia Soul, which is probably one of the best-selling competitors against this model. But like I said, you really feel like you have more power when you take off.
Yeah, not bad at all. And I also like that it doesn't sound too strained, even under hard acceleration. Now, one of the other things that you probably have noticed during the accelerating is that we don't have a CVT on board. This is actually a traditional automatic transmission, which is another aspect that I like about this powertrain setup. It's a 6-speed automatic, so the vast majority of rivals are going to give you a CVT, which, is not horrible for the most part, but, under hard accelerations, it sounds strained, and I think a lot of you guys prefer the traditional automatic setup, and this Trax is giving you that. Now, what it also gives you is front-wheel drive exclusively. So that's really one of the biggest things about this vehicle, is that this is a front-wheel drive only offering, so you cannot get all-wheel drive, and that's really one of the main reasons that the Trailblazer exists, like Drew was talking about earlier.
Yeah, so basically, this is one of those situations where you take those trade-offs, and if they're not acceptable to you, Chevy still gives you the availability to fix those trade-offs with the Trailblazer. So you can get a 9-speed automatic transmission in the Trailblazer. You can get all-wheel drive in the Trailblazer, and you can also get a little bit more power in the Trailblazer.
But now that we're just kind of cruising down the highway portion of this drive, I do want to talk about your ride quality. Now, going over those bridge abutments, I do want to talk about, the overall suspension setup. You would think for a subcompact SUV with 19-inch wheels that it would have pretty bad ride quality, but I'm happy to say over the past 7 days that we've been driving this vehicle, I've been really just impressed with it. Now, of course, you're going to feel some of those bumps and intrusions. This is a subcompact SUV, but overall, I think the suspension does a fantastic job of just really smoothing out all the harshness with those bumps.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that this thing doesn't sound so strained like some of the rivals. Speaking of sound, we're going to take things down to 55 miles per hour and get our official sound level reading here in Kentucky. Alright, so we have been setting right at 58.0 decibels for a little bit there, and that's our official rating. That definitely seems like a pretty good rating considering the fact that today it is rather windy outside. But we don't have to guess, we can always check our website, because at carconfections.com you can find all the sound level readings for all the subcompact crossovers, as well as each individual segment that we test. So that's going to put this Trax about middle of the pack in terms of the segment. It's really just about exactly the same as that Buick Envista Avenir that we tested out very recently on the same stretch of road at 58.3 decibels, as well as the Dodge Hornet and the Hyundai Kona. All right, let's talk about our Slam Dunk and Airball. So, I'll start off with the Slam Dunk. The Slam Dunk, I think, really just explains this vehicle well.
Yeah.
It's the value for the money. We've talked about throughout all the features you get, all the technology you get, all the space you get, the design you get. None of that is cheap feeling, yet the price, as we'll talk about in just a little bit when we get to the pricing section, is very, very good.
Yeah. And as far as the Airball is concerned, surprisingly, we kind of had to dig for this, and we're going to be a little bit petty, but it is something that bothers us after living with it for a full week. So when I'm talking about the door trim and the armrest area, right where you put your elbow is as hard as a rock, and so is this right here. We really wish Chevy had just maybe moved the leatherette from this part of the door to the armrest portion and make it a little bit softer. I think that would have honestly been a better move instead of making it uncomfortable for the person driving the vehicle.
Yeah, for sure. And like we said, there's so many features you don't even expect to have at this price tag that it maybe could have switched around the equipment and saved a few bucks and put the pad over here on the armrest.
Now that was our auto start stop system engaging right there. It is a pretty aggressive auto start stop system, and overall I found it to be good throughout the week. It's pretty smooth, maybe smoother than you would even expect.
Now let's discuss fuel economy. So the EPA rates this vehicle at 28 city, 32 highway, 30 combined. That's a good rating for the class. That's about 10% better, as a matter of fact, than most of its main rivals we've been mentioning throughout this video. But let's talk about our real-world fuel economy and take a look at what we have gotten this week.
Yeah, so as far as that's concerned, that is in here in the main infotainment display. So far, we've gone 137 miles, and the car says we've been averaging 24 miles per gallon, which that is below the EPA estimate. However, we haven't, fully finished our week yet. We may be able to get a few more miles in and improve that figure. Do keep in mind when we get our real-world fuel economy figures, that includes, of course, our testing of the vehicle, like, this test drive here where we're doing full throttle accelerations. So sometimes it does come in a little bit below the EPA, although this is about 4 mpg less than what the city is rated at.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as warranty coverage on this Trax, you have 3 years and 36,000 miles of basic coverage, 5 years, 60,000 mile powertrain coverage, and then your first maintenance visit is covered complimentary by Chevy.
And we've been talking about that affordable price tag the entire review. And what is that affordable price tag? Well, I'm very happy to tell you this vehicle starts at just a touch over $20,000 for the LS. As you move up the trim structure, the top models are going to be the Active and 2RS, which start at $23,900. Now, this particular model, we have every available option, as well as the 2RS trim level, plus the $1,095 destination charge. We're going to be sitting at around $26,600 fully loaded. Very impressive price point. If you ask me, you're getting a lot of features for the money. Now, if you're looking to buy a Chevy Trax or any new vehicle, we would also encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes. Now, why you do that is because we have a tool on our website that will connect you with local car dealers in your area to get you the best price on your new vehicle. It's also going to give you access to invoice pricing information, which is a great tool for dealer negotiation to help you get the best price on your new ride. If you'd like to take advantage of that, a link is provided in our video description. So now it's time for us to talk about potential resale value and reliability to make sure you are making a smart purchase. Now, first up, let's go ahead and talk about resale value. Now, as an economics graduate myself, Drew and I took the time to develop what we think is a good estimate for this vehicle's potential resale value. We estimate that after 5 years, this Chevy Trax will be worth 54.7% of its original MSRP, and after 10 years, 20.4%. That's about $14,500 after 5 years, and around $5,200 after 10 years.
We've also done the same for predicted reliability by making the Combined Reliability Index, which is a combination of automotive data sources around reliability. Based on this ranking, Chevy is rated above average compared to other vehicle makes. Actually, well above average, since it is the second most reliable make on our Combined Reliability Index.
If you'd like to check out all of our data about reliability and resale values, as well as learn about our methodology, make sure to head to carconfections.com/resale and carconfections.com/reliability. Buying a car is a big decision, and you want to make sure you're making a smart purchase, especially if you're shopping between different vehicle brands. And guys, that's going to be where we leave off on this in-depth review of the all-new 2024 Chevy Trax. If you enjoyed watching this 7-day review and found it helpful, we would really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button down below. By subscribing, not only are you telling us that you like our content, you're also telling the manufacturers that you like our content, and that's going to make it more likely for them to send these vehicles down to us to do extensive 7-day testing. So if you liked watching this, please subscribe down below. If you're already a part of our family, thank you so much for your continued support, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.